What factors contribute to achieving the desired performance outcome in your organisation? Join us as we explore the 3 key elements that I feel influence performance and success. Welcome back. Let's delve into the factors that I believe play a crucial role in achieving a performance outcome. So there's 3 areas that I always sort of look at. I sort of generally draw these in a triangle. So the first one of these is skills and knowledge, and largely I would say they're in the domain of the learner. Some people like to split them out and say skills is one thing and knowledge is another, but I kind of group them on one side of the triangle to sort of say and reflect the idea that this is about the learner. So that's skills and knowledge. Over there, we tend to run home to this one every time we have a performance issue in the workplace. In that, it must be a skills or knowledge problem with the learner, let's give them some training. The second one over here is the environment. This is the place where the learner gets to exhibit those skills. If the environment isn't right, I might still have the skills and knowledge needed to do my task particularly well, but something about the environment stops me. And I'll come back and do a full sort of example with a warehouse, because that's really my go-to sort of idea of how these things play out. So the environment is the second sort of element. The third element here is attitude. If all these things are in harmony and everything is going sweetly, we will get the performance outcome we want. So let's sort of run through 2 examples of how this sort of works and how it comes together. First one is the warehouse. So in the warehouse, we have to drive forklifts around, and I spent a lot of time in warehouses, and I've seen some really good behaviour in forklifts, and I've seen some really bad behaviour. The idea of that sort of driving and that sort of skill in the workplace of safely driving a forklift around is about skills and knowledge. So we teach people, and we have a licensing system that says you must have a forklift license. The outcome of that sort of license should say this person is known to have all the skills and knowledge to safely drive a forklift around the warehouse. So let's assume that in that case, that one's okay. Come to the second one, the environment one. There's a couple of really obvious sort of ones here. To me, culture is an important thing. I've worked in a lot of warehouses where the idea of racing around and sliding the forklift around corners is a really known sort of thing. If the culture of the workplace says, whatever safety sort of things you've been taught in your training about forklift driving, forget about it here, because on Friday afternoons, we have forklift races around the warehouse. And these days, warehouses come with really nicely polished floors, so you can actually slide a forklift. So the culture may be sort of affecting the performance outcome. You're not going to get good, safe driving of forklifts in a warehouse if the culture doesn't support that. The second one is, if management doesn't actually maintain the forklifts very well. Most common one here I see is bald tyres on forklifts in the warehouse. So you can go around a warehouse and you can look at the tyres on that thing and say you are never going to get a good performance outcome, because somebody will have a problem in the warehouse because of bald tyres on the actual forklift. So things like that, the environmental things, culture, maintenance, there could be sort of like, service history, a range of things. In a sports example, we'll come to one of those. The other one is attitude, right? Attitude can be in the domain of the learner, the supervisor, the management, the whole organisation. But if any of the sort of attitudes of people in that warehouse aren't geared towards the performance outcome you want, then again, you won't get good, safe forklift driving in the warehouse. So let's just stick with the employee who's driving the forklift. If they don't have an attitude of safety, if they're not looking around corners and slowing down on corners, and particularly on the stop lines, if they're not approaching their job with a right attitude, you are not going to get the performance outcome you want. So that's sort of a warehouse example. I'll step in now to a sports example, which is where I sort of first came across this with elite athletes at the Australian Institute of Sport. Generally, the sports psychologists look at these sort of things and say, look, why are we not getting gold medals, right? Or how do we get gold medals? They will look at this sort of model and work around and sort of go, is the person a good hockey player? Do they need more training? Do they know how to play hockey? Do they know the rules of the game? Do they know strategy in particular? So in the sports example, this became huge. How do you actually read the game and understand the game? How to wear down an opposition, the knowledge of the opposition team. So that's a knowledge component to that performance outcome. And the skills is obviously, in sport they talk about this thing called 10,000 hours. Music does as well. Mastery of a sport at gold level or sort of Olympic level tends to take 10,000 hours of training. So that's the skills and knowledge component. You'll get a gold medal if you do that. If you come down to the environment, So if you're in a team that trains well, trains hard, if you have good coaches around you, physios, doctors around you, if your family is highly supportive, most people know that athletes don't make and earn. So they need financial support from family members or partners that do that. So that environment around an elite athlete is really important. Right? One of the big things is, particularly in international sport and at Olympics level, is the travel time. So that environmental sort of factor there is often about, do people sort of travel to games the day before or 3 days before? If you go 3 days before, you get a chance to recover from any jet lag and that kind of stuff, and you settle into a new town, performance tends to increase. So we can literally see these graphs happening with that, where if I travel and I get there a week before, it's like that. If I travel and arrive 2 days before, my performance goes down. If I travel right on the date, sometimes you can get off the plane, if you've slept a bit on the plane, you can have your first sleep and you can perform almost at the same level. But it's a very complicated sort of graph. So all those things are sort of environmental things around the athlete and gold medal performance. And of course the last one is attitude. And we know that last 0.1, 0.2% is around attitude. And we quite often sort of find, in that case there, that winning attitude, that mental rehearsal of routines, that goal and modelling sort of stuff is a real winning combination too. If we sort of put here a gold medal, or in motorsport, I saw one example that the sports psychologist gave us with an Australian sort of high performance car racing driver, and their goal was to participate in the higher levels of the sport. That was their goal as a kid. They wrote it down at 14. They compared it to an international driver in Formula One, where their goal was to be the most winning world champion. And they could compare these two things and say, this is a huge difference in attitude between somebody who did go on to win a whole lot of world championships and someone who probably never will. Like, that's an astounding thing from a sports psychologist to sort of provide that insight, and it literally is all about attitude. So attitude can include over here things like goal setting. But take our warehouse example. It comes right back to, if people are under financial pressure, if their family life is not going too well, and they arrive to work tired, exhausted, stressed, and upset by something that happened at home, that just affects their attitude to their work and their view of safety when driving a forklift. So that's kind of the full circle on those sort of three things and the examples. I'm sort of really interested, I'd like you to reflect on your own experiences. Right? Do these sort of factors affect you, and do you view your training of where is the problem? Because I hate to think that organisations always jump to skills and knowledge. And this is where I have this model that if there's an environmental problem, right, for the actual employee, we need to come up to a level here to the actual management or supervisory sort of staff, flick it around and say, there's an environmental problem here, but it's happening because there's a skills and knowledge problem with management. So management aren't servicing or fulfilling their obligations to maintaining the forklifts, right? Or the coaching staff for an athlete there. So we sort of come up and we can spin this around and say an environmental problem for an employee is an attitude problem of management. So it's management who should have the training intervention, and it should focus on attitude rather than skills and knowledge. So I'd be interested to see, does that resonate with you? Do you approach your training design as to identify what the performance outcome is expected, what is the problem, and where is the problem on these three sides of the triangle? So thanks for tuning in. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to give us a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more of this sort of content, please hit subscribe. And of course, if you've got a friend who you think would enjoy these videos, please use the share button. So thanks for watching, and until next time, see you later.